Now that Tsubaki's fixed, you should be able to join the battle line. But I would advise you not to. If your ability is like mine, you're not suited for combat, especially against the Arrancar. Do you still want to fight? Then you shall. But you don't fully understand your abilities yet. There is a way for you to fight, but you must find it. Please remember this. The important thing isn't how you should be, but how you want to be. Orihime is one of the most misunderstood characters in the story of Bleach. And I believe that stems from the fact that we had a poor adaptation for the anime. At times she was overly awkward, overly reliant, and she was a damsel in distress. But most of all, people say it's because she's useless. She doesn't fight on her own. But like Rukia said, it's not the weak of body that causes problems on the battlefield. It's the weak of spirit. So for us to dispel this ridiculous narrative, we will talk about a couple of things. Her character, her powers, understanding your role, and showing parallels that she shares with other characters. Like, comment, subscribe, and let's get into this. First on this topic is her character. People tend to forget what Orihime went through due to her personality and overly positive attitude, as well as the poor adaptation that we got. When Orihime was born, Sora, her brother, was 15. To him, she was more of a daughter than a sister. The household that the two of them grew up in, it was an abusive household. Their parents were monsters, and the type that would silence a baby's crying with beatings. By the time Orihime was 3 and Sora was 18, he left the house and has been the two of them ever since. In junior high, Orihime was bullied due to the color of her hair, so they took scissors and they cut her hair. Orihime, so her brother doesn't worry, she lied to him and said that she just wanted to cut it. The hair that Orihime was so proud of, due to her older brother complimenting it, it was cut by her bullies due to the fact that they didn't like the color of her hair. Shortly after that, Sora was in a car accident and he died. Orihime was left all alone by herself. It wasn't until Tatsuki came along that she found her first friend, and she wasn't alone anymore. It's thanks to Tatsuki that Orihime was able to grow her hair long again. Her hair that was once a thing of the past, now symbolizing her love for her brother and her trust in Tatsuki, the girl that protected her for 3 years, all the way to high school. It's thanks to Tatsuki that Orihime is no longer alone. She now has a friend. Now this brings me to our first parallel. Ichigo and Orihime being bullied due to the color of their hair. Ichigo, just like Orihime, was bullied in junior high due to the color of his hair. Now, both of them had their own ways of dealing with said bullying. Ichigo, when he was in school, he got into a lot of arguments with his teachers. And then there were older guys who would want to kick his butt due to the color of his hair. This is a panel I wish was in the anime. This really drove home how alienating the color of their hair really is for the both of them. Now, Orihime, she's a pacifist at heart. It's against her nature to want to harm someone. We've seen this a couple of times in the story, and multiple times in the Arrancar arc. Orihime, she's loving, she's carefree, and a bit ditzy at the beginning of Bleach. If someone were to hurt her, instead of retaliating, she would usually just turn the other cheek and let them continue. That's how she is. It's against her nature. The Tres Bestia light novel called Nestle Tonight showed us that Orihime, when someone is in pain in front of her, she can't ignore them. She has to help. It was after Aizen was sealed, Apache, who came over to the group, she asked Orihime specifically to heal Haribel. This is just the type of person she is. They were just enemies prior to this, but yet now here she is helping the enemy. Orihime is the princess of the series. She's the type that wants to protect all those who need help, even after all the bullying in junior high. And a bit of a side note, in the beginning we were talking about Orihime's childhood, and we talked about how their parents were the type of monsters that would silence a baby with beatings. I think Kubo made Orihime's personality the polar opposite for a few reasons. I think it shows us as readers that you create your own path. You decide how you want to be. In middle school, when she was being bullied, she could have let that dictate how she would be in the future. She could have become a bully herself or went into a deep depression. Although that was at the toughest time of her life, she stood up and decided to keep smiling despite the hardships. And honestly, I understand that. When life gets hard, it's a lot easier to be upset, but it takes a lot more courage and a lot more strength to try and make something from that situation, to make something of your life instead of staying in that sorrow and that pain. That I can understand. Are you going to stay in that pain, or are you going to move forward and change your own fate? In chapter 41 and 42, when Orihime is fighting against a hollow that's able to control people, Orihime first unlocks her ability, which leads us to the next topic, Orihime's powers. Shun Shun Rika, the 6 princess shielding flowers. In chapter 228, when Orihime gets Tsubaki fixed, Hachi notes that her hairpins are similar to that of a Zanpakuto, and her ability is similar to Hachi's, and that she should be able to restore the broken pieces with ease. As we rewind back to chapter 43, Shuno says, "We're the power of your soul. We were awakened by something you responded to. In essence, we are you." We know that a Zanpakuto is an extension of the wielder due to spending time with them, eating, sleeping. That's how you imprint a part of your soul onto the Zanpakuto, and thus the spirit is born. It seems to be the same here. Orihime had her hairpins for 3 years, which she received from her brother. She had ample time to imprint her soul onto them, and they all show an aspect of her soul. I'm not sure in which regard that they do, and I'm not going to sit here and try to go through each one, but we are talking about her powers and her hairpins and how they're similar to a Zanpakuto. So let's go a little deeper into that. In my opinion, Hachi in this moment, he is a credible character, since Kubo is using this moment to describe Orihime's powers. Orihime's power is called the Shun Shun Rika, and it has 3 different abilities. And the first one we see is Santen Keshun, the 3-god shield. This allows Orihime to reject attacks beyond the shield, and they create a barrier between Orihime and the enemy. Second on this list is Soten Kishun, the twin god reflection shield. Shuno says this allows Orihime to reject behind the shield. In other words, we can reverse any damage to the person covered by the shield. And last on this list, we have Koten Zanshun, the lone god slicing shield, performed by Tsubaki. He is able to reject on both sides of the shield. As he says, "I blow a hole in the enemy, create a shield inside, and reject the union of matter. I slice the enemy in 2. Now, later on in the Lost Agent arc, where many refer to this as the Fullbring arc, we see Orihime use a new attack. This one is called Shiten Koshun, 4-god resistance shield. For this ability to work, Orihime combines Santen Keshun and Koten Zanshun. This diffuses the impact of an attack by exploding the moment it's hit, and at the same time, it automatically responds with a reactive attack of its own. We've seen her use this against Ginjo in the manga. We've seen her use this against Tsukushima in the anime version, and then in the 1000-Year Blood War against the Hollows in episode 1. Orihime has 2 options of attack, but I love the fact that Orihime realized that attacking others is against her nature. So she developed a way to do the thing that suits her. It shows that even though Orihime didn't train with Hachi, the way that we all thought Kubo was leading her in her character arc, it shows that she took what he said to heart. What's important isn't how you should be, but how you want to be. Chapter 228 was Orihime's The Blade Is Me, introspectively looking into yourself and finding out who you are. I mean, the Arrancar arc was literally dedicated to her in more ways than one. Orihime is referred to as the sun, same way that Masaki is later on by Ishin. She's also the embodiment of the human heart and what it means to be one heart with her friends. Kubo wouldn't have shown all these imageries and given her these lines if she wasn't integral to the story. There's a reason why Ukiura, when he was fighting against Ichigo, he wasn't just fighting against him. He was fighting against Orihime as well. Both of them representing what it means to be of one heart and one mind, and to have trust in each other. Ukiura couldn't understand it. It's through the actions of Ichigo that he was able to understand what Orihime truly meant. And now let's go to our next topic, Orihime and her story importance. In chapter 199, before the fight with Grimmjow and his faction, Rangiku is talking to Orihime, and she reveals her feelings of jealousy towards Rukia. Orihime feels that she isn't able to contribute and encourage Ichigo the way Rukia does. Rangiku says, Ichigo is still a kid who can barely stand on his own 2 feet, and he needs the both of you. So let's pause right there. Orihime doesn't seem to realize that the very same thing she's jealous of Rukia about is something she's done for Ichigo already. It's thanks to Orihime that Ichigo mustered up the courage to save Rukia. Without chapter 58 and Orihime talking to Ichigo, the Soul Society arc would not have happened. There's a lot more to go off of that, and I'll save that for my next video. But Orihime makes Ichigo reflect on his inner self and his desires. She makes him confront his emotions up front and speaks to his heart. She brushes away the confusion and brings clarity. Now Rukia in chapter 196, she's able to get Ichigo back on his feet. Now keep in mind, Ichigo prior to this chapter, he got wrecked by Ulquiorra and Yami. Orihime got hurt, Chad got hurt, Tatsuki almost got hurt, and hundreds of souls actually died due to Yami sucking out multiple souls out of the town. So Ichigo took a major L that day. But Rukia in chapter 196 was able to get him back on his feet. It was more of a slap on the back and telling him to run forward. It'll be okay as long as you will it, which isn't necessarily the best way to console someone in the long run. Kicking someone in the face and slapping them is not the best way to console someone who just lost the battle. Rukia is a teacher for Ichigo. She taught him the basics of Soul Reaper duties, and she saved his life along with his family's life. But she's also a friend to him that smacks him around when needed, when he needs to get out of a funk. This is how I feel Rukia is. She shows her concern for him in her own way. It's not romantic like many make it out to be. Orihime to Ichigo is a friend, but it's different. But what's interesting about their relationship during the series is that Kubo goes out of his way to show us that Ichigo cares for Orihime more than any other, specifically more than Rukia. It was Orihime's words that inspired him to go after Rukia, since that's what he already decided to do. It was for Orihime that Ichigo chose to charge into Hueco alone if need be. It was the news of Orihime being abducted that made Ichigo go into a depressive state. It was for the sole purpose of protecting Orihime that Ichigo rose from the dead in order to protect Orihime. Kubo has shown time and time again that Ichigo cares for Orihime more than anyone else. In chapter 196, Ichigo made a promise to Orihime. Even though Chad and Tatsuki were hurt, he decided to make this vow to Orihime that he wouldn't allow for her to get hurt again by the Arrancar. Now, whether Ichigo feels a one-sided sympathy for Orihime this entire time, which is why he goes to such lengths just to protect her, it's clear that Kubo made Orihime as the princess of Bleach. Ichigo is her knight in shining armor that protects her. Now that we've talked about Orihime's character, her powers, and her story importance, I think it's time to look a little deeper into Orihime's name herself. Her name literally means Weaver Princess. Oddly enough, she shares the same name as someone from an old Japanese folklore. It's called The Story of Tanabata. The god of the sky had a daughter. Her name was Orihime. She made clothes for the gods. Due to her loneliness, the god decided to have her married. He found a man named Hikoboshi. The two of them fell in love and they got married. Because they were so in love with each other, the two of them neglected their work. The god was upset and decided to separate them on opposite sides of the Amanagawa River, one on the east side and one on the west side, never to meet again. Because of the tears of Orihime not being able to see Hikoboshi, the god decided they can meet once a year on the 7th day of the 7th month. After all their hard work, the fateful day came. It was time for them to meet each other. But the waters of the Amanagawa River were too hard to cross. In response to Orihime's tears, a flock of magpies came and built a bridge for the two lovers to be reunited. But if it rains on the day of Tanabata, the waters will rise, preventing the magpies to create a bridge. If this happens, the two lovers must wait another year in order to meet. Our female lead in the story of Bleach is named Orihime. which means Weaver Princess. The rain that fills the river of Amanagawa, this can be seen as a force that prevents the two lovers from connecting. In Bleach, rain symbolizes pain, despair, and sadness. Both stories have a heavy importance on rain. Orihime Inoue's powers, Shunshu Nika, are a mirror of the flock of magpies that connects them to someone else. The flock responded to Orihime's tears the same way Shunshurika were awakened due to Orihime's tears and desire to protect Tatsuki. Orihime and Hikoboshi were able to connect their bridge on their fateful day. The Weaver Princess of Bleach and her knight in shining armor, through all of the pain and walking through all of the rain, conquering their fears, Kubo allowed the two of them to connect their bridge of magpies, the end result being their son Kazui.